I call to order the August 15th City of New Bern Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Kendrick, will you give us a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. We'll start with Board Member Kyle Deeren.
Here.
Board Member Danielle Peoples.
Here.
Board Member Kip Paragoy.
Here.
Chairman Brad Jefferson.
Here.
Board Member Rusty Ingram.
Here.
Board Member Kelly Kaiser.
Here.
Board Member Thomas Brownell.
Here.
And Board Member Marshall Ballard.
Here.
All right, and we do have a quorum.
We do. All right, cool deal. All right, will you please rise and join me with the saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, so I just got a couple items here under Chairman's remarks, and then we'll get into business. First, I want to thank board members Margie Dunn and Sonny Aluzzo. They spent many years on this board, did a lot of good work, and were very good to me. They have rolled off the board, and so on behalf of myself, the board, and the City of New Bern, thank you, Margie and Sonny. You've done a great job. And with that, I want to welcome our two newest members, Danielle Peoples? Mm-hmm. All right, perfect. All right. Welcome. Thank you for your service. And would you like to introduce yourself to the board and say a couple things?
Sure, yes. Hi, Danielle Peoples. I've met some of you at the last meeting, and good to see everybody here tonight. I have a background in environmental and stakeholder engagement, spent 12 plus years at Duke Energy, and now work for a consulting firm that does projects across the country, primarily energy and renewable projects and some development projects as well. So very interested in kind of the nexus of people and the built environment, and have been here in New Bern for over 3 years. Self-selected to call it home, so appreciate the opportunity to give back with hopefully relevant experience to what we all look at.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for your service. Appreciate it. And the other member is Mr. Kip Paragoy, and I know you've sat on some boards and done some things, so would you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. My name's Kip Paragoy. I am in the real estate development business. Been doing it for about 38 years. Developed Greenbrier over on the other side of town, Bern, and currently working at Carolina Colors. And have also done a community up in Chocowinity called Cypress Landing. So I have a lot of experience and background in real estate development. During those years, though, it's always called to be a service in the community in which you work. And I've been on the Planning and Zoning Board before for 6 years, served as chairman twice, and I served 6 years on the Board of Adjustments and chairman for 5 years on that board. So it's all about being part of New Bern and serving New Bern and watching it grow and develop into the great town that it really is.
Well, thanks, Kip. Thanks for all your service. Appreciate you jumping back on the board. Next thing I want to talk about, our director, Jessica Rue, the Director of Development Services, asked me to read these five items so that the public would know them. So most of this is about the land use ordinance update. So the Alderman work session is from 2 to 5 on Tuesday, September 10th. They will be covering the project to date and where it is headed. The Land Use Ordinance Steering Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, September the 11th. And as chair of this board, I sit on the steering committee. I don't know if you two are aware of that. I'll discuss that later. Also, open office hours to schedule questions, ideas, comments, and concerns from 2 to 5 on September 11th in Development Services. If you want time with the consultant, please schedule time during that meeting. And for the board members, our consultant is available also anytime that you two can accommodate on Zoom. So reach out to Jessica Rue at Development Services. He's more than welcome or more than willing to talk to board members. I know he talked to Rusty once before on Zoom, so please ask those questions. And in looking ahead, we anticipate in November we will be at a point where we'll schedule interest group meetings. So they want to get members of the downtown homeowners association, downtown businesses, developers, and start having those meetings with the consultants and so to plan ahead for the land use update, which is basically going forward what this little section chairman's report is just what's going on with that or anything else that needs to be discussed. And so with that, we have one other item that I am going to, for the sake of the audience, I am going to, without objection from the board, table the New Bern Planning and Zoning Board Rules of Procedures discussion until after item number 5. So we'll talk about that later. So we're going to move, without objection from anybody on the board, I'm going to move on to action items. So 5A, Tyler Home and Lake, Phase 17 and 18.
And Mr. Chairman, before I actually present that item, Board Member Kyle Deering had expressed a conflict of interest with that item. So just for the record, the board has to make a motion essentially to allow him to excuse himself from voting on the Lake Tyler items.
Okay.
I make the motion that because Kyle Deering has a conflict of interest, we excuse him from voting on this item.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. I think we have one more motion.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion that we allow public comment on each of the items as we go through them, and public comment be limited to 3 minutes.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
But, Mr. Chair, for purposes of action item 5A, if Mr. Darren would like to have a seat in the audience, that might be appropriate.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, and good evening to the board. For our first item, we are going to work here on Home on the Lake, Phase 17 and 18. It's the general plan submission for subdivision, or excuse me, major subdivision 002-931-2024. And the applicant is Thomas Engineering, PA John G. Thomas, and the owner is Stars and Stripes 4F LLC. The location for the property for the general subdivision is Lake Tyler Drive, New Bern, North Carolina. The existing zoning is currently residential 10A or R-10A, and the size is 19.32 total acres. An overview quickly here. The proposed plan unit development is for 53 single-family detached homes. Phase 17 will have 24, and Phase 18 will have 29. The subject properties, again, are currently zoned R-10A or R10A. This is an established residential zoning district within the city of New Bern's land use ordinance. So the purpose is, at least for the residential districts, is to bring about comfortability, health and safety in a pleasant environment in which to live. And this first map is a vicinity map that is just showing both phases inclusive to the entirety of the property. The second map indicates the buffer area that is taken essentially when we're producing the mailings and the notification. The third map here is the aerial for the property. And the fourth map is the reflection for the zoning. It is signified by the orange-ish color for R-10A here. And for this particular plat, this is reflecting Phase 17. It's going to be followed by Phase 18, but just so you have the differences of understanding between both, this is Phase 17. And this is followed by Phase 18. This is the plat for it. For staff's evaluation, the proposed subdivision does meet all requirements set forth in the City of New Bern's Land Use Ordinance, and all comments from the Departmental Review Committee have been addressed. And if the board has any questions, I will take those at this time.
Board have questions for Kendrick? All right. Thanks, Kendrick. Would the applicant like to make a statement?
Thank you, Kendrick. I'm Bobby Billingsley. I'm with Thomas Engineering, representing the developer. Don't really have anything to add. Besides the fact that the phase 17 and 18 were on the original general plan as future development, and that's why they're numbered as such. It's basically two extensions of the existing road, similar lot sizes, setbacks, all that. Just want to say that I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Board have any questions? Kendrick, did the sign-in sheet for Rob? Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, sir. Okay. All right. So just for everybody knows, this is where we open up for the public. We're going to go down these list of names. If you don't want to speak on this item, just tell me, and we'll go to the next item. All right? No big deal. So we're going to start with Mr. Tom Davis.
We're going to object to public comment that's not permitted by labor ordinance or by personification law. We're invited to comment on this law from the city approving this application.
Okay. This is City Attorney. I have an objection to our public comment.
And Mr. Chair, you can note Mr. Thomas's objection. If a majority of the board members would like to hear from members of the public, you can entertain those comments. However, it's important to note that this is a technical legislative process. So the criteria that you are measuring the plan against are the technical requirements of the City of New Brighton's land use ordinance.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion we continue if there's anyone that wants to speak and give public comment on this particular item, that we allow them to speak for 3 minutes.
Okay. I have a motion. So I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Objections noted. Mr. Tom Davis, you're doing another one. Okay. Wendy Card, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for allowing me to comment. I have two questions, maybe more. The traffic impact analysis for Washington Post Road, was that, I know it was submitted to NCDOT for review. Were improvements required by NCDOT, or is that a recommendation?
I'll speak to that, Ms. Card, but as far as for what I understand, I don't know all the, I guess, whether or not they specifically have approved it. They may be working through it, but it's not something that we can essentially require. If they're working through with that agency, it really stays separate from us until kind of the finished product. So we don't have a specific answer as to yes or no as to where that's at.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Also, the land use plan that I'm assuming, I think that you all base your decision on consistency. Am I on the right track?
Not for the subdivision process, no.
I'm sorry?
Not for the subdivision process, no.
So when you approve, or you approve the general plan, you're not making a recommendation, or not recommendation, I'm sorry. You're not saying this is consistent or not consistent with the land use plan? That's not a, it's not a, you don't make an inconsistency statement?
No, ma'am. So there's two different documents. When you're talking about this, we're basing it off of standards in the land use ordinance, and that's either a yes or no. It's not consistent or inconsistent. It either meets it or doesn't. When we're talking about the land use plan and consistency statements, that typically applies to rezonings.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, ma'am.
And also, what fire station services the Lake Tyler community,
That might be,
or that Washington put that area.
I understand. That's probably a better question for the applicant. I did not exactly see the fire station that was servicing that area.
Okay, so this has nothing to do, I'm just making note that the nearest fire station is Elizabeth Ave, not as noted in the land use plan. So, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Fire would have commented on this, correct? During the
Absolutely. I just don't typically have this particular station.
Right.
That they would actually.
But they had no
service,
objection.
or which station would service them, no.
Right.
There was nothing that would impede going forward.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, next would be Mr. Scott Anderson. Not this one, okay. Miss Elena Ross. Not this one. The last one, if you know that you signed up, I have to apologize, your handwriting is Pearson Curry, perhaps? Preston, maybe? Yes. Would you like to speak on this item? No, thank you. Okay. All right, so that part's done. I will open it up to the board for discussion. Doug, yes, sir.
I didn't know that I was supposed to sign in, but I need to just ask some questions on this.
Come on up. You got 3 minutes.
I apologize for not signing in.
That's okay. No problem.
On the development for,
Sir,
Lake
can you,
Tyler.
I'm sorry, sir, can you state your name and
Oh,
your address?
I'm sorry. My name is David, last name Wunker, Wunker.
Thank you.
I live at 275 Lake Tyler Drive. On your map there, the development on the south end of the lake, I live at lot 710, and I own lot 711. Now, the concern I've got for this development, and this is 17, is that what that was, 17, 18? 17. It shows right here on this map that the street, Lake Tyler Drive, dead ends with 2 cul-de-sacs. And there is no outlet. So of the 24 development or houses, I guess, that are going to be there, the only way in is one way. One way in, one way out. That's it. Now, the rest that's not shown on this map is owned by the D.R. Horton, and they're currently developing also on the south side of the lake. So you're looking at probably 50 to 60 more homes there, all to go in and out of Lake Tyler on one street with no out. And the last thing I want to say about this whole development here, I was there, you all remember Hurricane Florence. Well, my house at lot 710 is now in the flood zone because of Hurricane Florence. And the flood came from the Neuse River coming across right where your development 18, I forget the number, 17, 18? Yeah, that's right where the water came from that flooded Lake Tyler. And it flooded up to my home up to 10 feet from my back door. So I'm accepting or thinking that that entire development, that entire area is in the flood zone. And that's going to cause development problems. And when I first bought my house back in 2008 and moved into that development, I was told, and I may have been misinformed, that that whole east end of the lake, that whole area is wetlands, and it's not developable. That's what I was told then, and I'm not sure if that's true or not. But that's what I was informed of when I bought my home. And from that, I guess I'm out of time. Okay, thank you.
All righty, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out. All right, hearing no one else wants to make a comment, I'll again open it up to the board for discussion. If the board has no discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve zone, phase 17 and 18 of Lake Tyler.
All right, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on this item? Sorry. Well, the board is conducting business. Any other discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 5B. Kendrick.
All right. And Mr. Chairman, I want to go ahead and express the applicant actually has already submitted an email stating that they would actually request a continuance to or tabling of the actual matter for the next meeting, which is on September 19th of this year.
Okay.
So the board would have to entertain a motion essentially to table that matter to the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Then I'll entertain a motion to table item 5B.
I make a motion that we table item 5B until the next meeting.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
And Mr. Chair, at this time, since the Lake Tyler projects have been addressed, you may want to entertain a motion to admit Mr. Deering back to the board.
All right. I'll entertain that motion.
I make a motion as we've completed the work on the Tyler projects that we allow Board Member Deering to come back to the board.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that item? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. You are welcome back up here, Kyle. All righty, we'll move to item 5C, West New Bern Townhomes.
This is item 5C. This is West New Bern Townhomes. This is a general plan subdivision for a plan unit development, and this is a major subdivision 002-933-2024. The request summary here, the applicant is Weyerhaeuser NR Company, or Tim Jackson, and the owner is the Weyerhaeuser Company. The location is at or near NC 43, and the existing zoning currently is commercial 3 or C-3 and industrial 1 or I-1. The size is 4.05 total acres. And just a quick overview, the proposed plan unit development is for 48 single-family attached townhomes. The subject properties are currently, again, Zone C3 and Industrial 1. These are both established as a commercial and industrial zoning district per the City of New Bern Land Use Ordinance. And the purpose for the commercial district is to essentially accommodate for offices, personal services, retailing, and convenience goods. And the purpose for the industrial district is to accommodate for industries which can be operated in a relatively clean and quiet manner, and which will not be obnoxious to adjacent residential or business districts. And the first map here that you see is the vicinity map, which highlights the actual parcels involved. This is all inclusive to one parcel. It's just separated. Second map includes the buffering that was taken for the parcel itself, and just highlighted in blue there for the mailing and the notifications. The third map is the aerial map, which reflects essentially what's there currently, and it's highlighted in red. And the fourth map is reflective to the actual zoning districts, the reddish color indicating C-3, and the kind of whitish, I guess, crossed there is to indicate the industrial. Here is the actual plat map, just showing those proposed lots. And staff's evaluation, once again, the proposed subdivision does meet all requirements set forth in the City of New Bern's land use ordinance, and all comments from the Development Review Committee have been addressed. And at this time, if the board has any questions, I'll take those.
Board have any questions for Kendrick? All right. Hearing none, we'll go to public comment on this item. We'll start with Mr. Tom Davis.
Thank you very much. I
3 minutes.
appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I'm a resident of West Newman and right across the street from where this is going in. I have noted today and yesterday we're clearing the lot with all the equipment going on. So my first question is, when is intended for these to be built? Have they already been approved, or are they still have to be approved?
Is the development here, or is the applicant here to answer that question?
Mr. Anderson.
Sorry, I apologize. I should have given you the option to speak, but go right ahead.
So these are intended to be built at first of the year. So I'm Scott Anderson. I am the engineer for warehouse. So the plan, once this plan is approved, right now they're logging, they're timbering, clearing to prepare for that. And then as soon as we get all the permits and plans approved, they're ready to start construction.
I'm sorry. Can you please speak into the microphone? It's being recorded and all that.
Thank you. I was been observing the logging all day today, and the way we found out about this, taking a walk, and there's a sign about the size of the screen announcing. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then the next day, I know that log trucks are out there cutting logs and hauling logs out right in front of my house, and I was just kind of interested to watch. And it seems to me that 48 units in 4 acres of land is a fairly tight access. Now, one of the problems that I see with the note here, it says it's County Line Road. Isn't County Line Road over close to Perrytown Road? I mean, it's on the other end of the county. So I just want to be sure you realize where this project's going in. It's not going in toward Havelock, it's going in toward Kinston. Does that make a difference?
I don't see County Line Road.
Can you be specific as to where you're referring to County Line Road, please?
Well, if you go over this, I think back.
No, I'm talking about is there a document saying that it's being proposed there?
Right here it says location Avenue County Line Road on the document,
Oh, yes, it is. That is on the agenda.
which is not anywhere near where this project is. And also, it backs up to Highway 43. And there's a lot of noise from Highway 43 now where the school's going to go, where it goes up and there's no trees in that part. So one of the concerns I have about this is the noise from traffic. Now, I know we just cut the sawmill's being closed, but there's a lot of log trucks that come down there, and when they're coming back the other way, they're on the Jake brake. When they're going out up the hill, they've pretty well got the power on. So you hear the trucks now from down there, but when you take the trees out, it's going to be sitting on the highway. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My apologies to the applicant. I should have let you speak before public comment. Do you have any comments to make for this?
Again, my name is Scott Anderson. I'm with Art Consulting Group. We're the engineer for Warehouser for this project. Again, this is 48 units. These are attached single-family units, or what people typically refer to as townhomes. So these units are set up so that the fronts of the units will face Clock Road and Bayard Wooten Way in the back. And then they'll have garage access off of Arrowwood Alley that runs between the sets of lots. So these are very similar to what's across the street. The style and character of these will be very similar to West New Bern Phase 1. Again, this kind of creates a nice transition from the common apartments that are located just to the south and the future school that will be located to the north of these. As you can see on the map, this does not go all the way to 43. It's only laid out to go about halfway to 43. So there will be room for future development adjacent to 43. But again, 48 lots, 4 acres. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Board have any questions for the applicant?
I have a comment. Along the wall, across the street, we have lots, we have doors on both sides.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's not as much more dense than the other side of the street.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next
Hey,
person.
Scott, real quick, a question for you. If members of the public have questions or want more information, is there a way that we can direct them to a website or a point of contact for those?
Yeah, so my contact information is on the plans that are included in your agenda packet. So that's the easiest way for them to find my contact information. But I'll be happy to answer and give my contact information out tonight.
Okay. Yeah, noted for those in the audience who might have questions that are best for the developer.
All righty. Thank you much.
Can I ask a question?
Sure,
Is there
absolutely.
any indication on these plans, I mean, you made the statement that it only goes part way from Clock Road up to 43. Do I have to actually measure it by looking at this? I mean, how would I know
If you go
that?
back up to the cover sheet, so that shows the gray area is the area that we are proposing this 4 acres. So
Okay,
you
that's
see
not
Clock
in
Road to the south of the dark gray area. The road to the right is a future
Right.
street that's between us and what will be Thales Academy, and then Highway 43 at the top.
Okay. But yeah, this picture wasn't in our packet, so that's why I was confused. But thank you for clarifying that.
All right. Elena Ross? Pass. Pearson? Pass. Okay. I will open it up to the board for discussion on this item. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I make a motion we recommend to the Board of Aldermen to approve item 5C, West Newbern Townhomes.
General. Yeah, we approve, not the board.
Well, don't we recommend, we approve? We don't recommend to the Board of Aldermen?
No, sir.
Okay. I recommend we approve
Yeah,
item
general
5C,
plan.
West Newbern Townhomes.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 5D, Lucas Land Company LLC rezoning.
All right, this is the rezoning here is for rezoning 002-925-2024. This is the Lucas Land Company LLC rezoning. And the request summary here, the applicant is Preston Lucas. The owners is, owner is Lucas Land Company LLC. The location is 597 Washington Post Road. And the current zoning is agriculture 5 or A-5, and the proposed zoning is residential 6 or R-6. The parcel identification number is 8-222-046, and the size currently is 6.96 total acres. The agriculture 5 or A-5 zoning district analysis here, to give a generalization, I'm just going to kind of do some cliff notes, but the A5 agricultural district, it's designed to secure the agricultural integrity of areas so classified and to allow for low-density, single-family development on 5-acre minimum lots. This also encourages conservation of the area's existing agricultural and forestry resources and to promote further expansion of these land-related resources. To prohibit necessarily non-agricultural and non-forestry related commercial and industrial uses, that would be kind of the opposite necessarily. So, and the last thing, it's to discourage any use which would, which because of its character or size, that would create requirements for cost and public services such as police and fire protection. And the residential 6 zoning district analysis, Essentially, it's designed to accommodate for single, two, and multifamily dwellings with 6,000 square feet minimum lots for one dwelling and 2,000 square feet required for each additional unit. This is to encourage continued use of the land for residential purpose. This is to prohibit essentially commercial and industrial or uses of the land, to also prohibit any other use which would substantially interfere with the development or continuation of a residential structure in that district. And the use comparison, I won't go down the whole entire list here. I'll allow for you to kind of view it yourself, but you have a use comparison for agriculture 5 and also residential 6. And this is just uses that are taken from our table of permissible uses within the City of New Bern's land use ordinance. And it's just to give you a comparison and understanding. And the first map here that you see is actually the vicinity map, which is highlighted in red. This is for the entirety of the parcel. And then you have that followed by the buffer map, which also takes the exterior there, just to showcase the mailings and the notifications. And that's followed by the aerial map, which is just trying to give you an understanding as to what's on the ground. And lastly, the zoning map here is to indicate the current zoning district, which is the agriculture 5 or A-5 zoning district. And the action needed by the board essentially is just to adopt a consistency statement and recommendation for the Board of Aldermen. But if the board has any questions, I'll take those.
Board have any questions for Kendrick?
Kendrick, one of the key issues here is that it's a landlocked piece of land.
You are correct. And the applicant, we did disclose and have a conversation about that. He is fully understanding that it is landlocked. I think that was a comment from not only the planning side, but also fire, if I'm not mistaken. And basically, from what I understand, there's an easement that is to be worked out, or an agreement to access that property. But I could let the
From where?
applicant speak. I'd let the applicant speak more additionally on that. And I don't know if you wanted to have him come up, but I believe he's here. So
Yeah, sure. Preston? And I apologize, I see now that you're the property owner, and I've called you twice about this. Sorry.
How's everybody doing? Preston, nice to meet you guys. So you can jump right into it. I know you mentioned that the property may be landlocked. So there is a current easement going to the property, deeded easement that's recorded with the Register of Deeds or Record of Deeds. We did and request an additional easement. Well, it's already confirmed at this point. 50-foot easement coming from that same property. So we'll have 2 easements leading to the property.
Can you indicate where those easements are, Preston, for us?
Hi, my name is Alana Ross, and I'm a broker for Preston to sell the property. I did bring in documentation from Registry of Deeds and an illustration of where the current easement is on survey and where the proposed easement will go. So if I could pass these to you, I'd be happy to share about 10 copies. So while they're being passed out quickly, page 1 is actually Exhibit A from the current deed. I didn't print the entire deed. It talks about 2 separate easements. I've attached both surveys for both of those easements. The first easement existing is a 30-foot easement onto Washington Post Road. This second easement is a 20-foot easement that goes out to West Pleasant Hill Road. There actually is 2 existing easements to this parcel of land. The owner of lot 1, 2, and 3 lives there. Original easement of 30 feet would go right by his door of his house. When he sold the land to Mr. Lucas, he requested the easement be relocated. The last document I gave you is an approximate of where that 50-foot easement would be relocated on that front parcel of 1, 2, and 3. We believe a 50-foot easement would better serve this parcel than a 30-foot for fire, EMS, utilities. Plus, it would be a straight line easement. Currently, we have a very zigzag easement going back to this parcel of land, which is doable, but not really a great ideal situation. There also is a diagram there of a current homeowner on Lot 1's home, and you can see how close that easement will go past his door based on the surveys I've submitted. Mr. Lucas does have in the works the surveyor ready to put the 50-foot easement in.
Do we have any other questions?
Any questions?
Can we go back to Kendrick?
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll open it up to general discussion where we can talk to the city staff.
Kendrick, the question that arises is we're talking about an R6 zone, which is as dense as a residential zone as we have,
Right.
which even allows mobile home parks, as I recall.
It doesn't allow for manufactured home park. It only allows for type A manufactured homes, which essentially is a double wide.
Okay.
But it also, you have to separate those lots in order to do that. So.
But regardless, it's as dense as it gets in our current zoning organization. With that type of density on that parcel of land, does a 50-foot road easement qualify for the type of road designation that would be required to handle that traffic?
It's a good question for Public Works. Being as honest as I can't answer that question definitively just because that's really outside of my purview. For the rezoning application, we don't know what type of use may be established there. We don't know the traffic impacts that may come about. If that's introduced, I would say an application, just depending on what is submitted, it'll be vetted though through the Public Works agency before anything were to go forward. They're a part of our department.
So in other words, if someone submitted that type of product, that
Yes, ma'am.
go back through, okay.
That's correct. Any type of use that would get submitted, regardless of what that may specifically be, at that time, there'll be some type of application process to where we can understand and assess what that is. And typically, BRC is going to be involved with that.
Okay.
Kendrick, would the owner also have the option of pursuing a special use permit if they wanted some items that qualified under R6 without the approval of this rezoning?
So if you elect to not, or if this rezoning does not get approved, they would not have that option. This property currently is still A-5, so it would have to transition and actually be, essentially the Board of Aldermen would have to give or issue an approval for the actual rezoning to take place prior to them getting access to do a special use permit in R-6, if that makes sense.
Okay. So an allowable special use permit under A-5?
They could do that right now.
Okay. And I know we're not getting into the specific use of the property.
Right.
So I guess that's just sort of a
The
consideration for the applicant.
Right. I was going to say the best way to understand it is anything that's pertinent to that zoning district, you would want to understand can be placed in that district, depending on whether that's A-5 or if it transitions to R-6. So you have some uses that are allowed by right and some uses that require a special use permit. Depending on what zoning district it is, all those uses that you see on the table, they have access to, whether it's current or if it transitions, then they have R-6.
And we're not supposed to consider the use that he's proposing, but the use that he is proposing is allowed under A-5.
Well, I don't know the specific use and if the intent by the applicant is for a manufactured home park, which I'm not suggesting. We really won't know until an actual application comes in, so you gotta be careful not to
Understood.
go down that route, because you gotta consider all the uses.
Understood.
Any more discussion or questions from Kendrick?
But basically, if you go from A-5 to R-6, Class B manufactured homes and mobile home parks are not allowed in R-6.
You're correct.
Nor are single-family attached houses are not allowed in A-5, but are allowed in R-6.
Right. And that's basically what I'm saying in that respect, is that there's a variety of uses, and the comparisons between the two different districts is kind of what I try to present to you, just to show you that from A-5, there's certain uses that are authorized, whether it be by special use or permitted by right. And then you have R-6, which also has certain uses that are authorized, special use, or permitted by right, that they may not be allowed in each other or on the opposite side. So, but all uses for that district, depending on what its zoning district, are going to be in play.
And for us, looking at this parcel, there's existing residential, and then there's existing agricultural land, so it's not an outlier necessarily either way.
Correct.
And there is adjacent to it a lot of R20 also.
Right.
There's
Yes.
more R20 in A5 than there is R6 adjacent to it.
There is quite a bit.
Board have any other questions? Okay, or any other discussion on this item? All right. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion on this item.
And Mr. Chair, just in the spirit of being helpful, since this is a rezoning, this is a recommendation. And in the motion, you'll need to make a determination about whether this application is consistent with the city land use plans, adjacent uses, reasonable, and in the public interest.
Okay. Again, I'll entertain a motion. I can't make it, so.
Doesn't the item die with lack of a motion?
I have not had this problem
That's a
as chair.
for a city attorney, maybe.
That would be an excellent question for the city attorney.
So are we in a position where the board is not going to take action? Is that where we are?
I mean, I'm prepared to wait, but it seems to be we are in that position. No one wants to make a motion. Either for or against.
Somebody would still have to make a motion to table or continue this item. So somebody still has to make a motion.
Okay? So there's an option.
And there also has to be a reason for tabling and continuing this item.
Well, I will make a motion that we recommend to the Board of Aldermen approval of the zoning text, and that this is consistent with the comprehensive land use plans.
Okay, we can do those together.
I'm sorry?
It's consistent and recommend, we can do that in one motion?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion to recommend. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right,
I guess, I mean, this is a tough one, right? I mean, because you're right up against R6, as Kip mentioned, right? So you have it on that side, but you've got all kinds of agricultural land around it and R20 on either end. So similar to other things we have that have been brought before us, I mean, this is a tough one because you're right on the edge. If the parcel was already out to Washington Post Road and we're talking about, adding on to a development, that would be an easier question. In this particular case, we're talking about generating an easement that's nowhere close to the existing R6 and then putting R6 in there when R20 is on either side and you've got agricultural. I mean, this is, at least for me, this is difficult.
With consideration to rezonings, whether or not it has access to roads or utilities isn't necessarily the question. It is whether or not this is consistent with the land use plans. The ordinance standards also don't apply necessarily. It's the plans and their consistency, as well as a good question to ask is this a logical outgrowth? When you mentioned that it is already adjacent to R6, a lot of times in other municipalities and counties' land use maps, there will be a transitional zone. The issue with this is that it currently has a harsh transition from R6 to A5 in the first place. So if you can logically come to a consensus for your motion, I would recommend basing it off the plans as well as what is on the ground for development patterns.
Right, but as I mentioned, you're talking about something that isn't an outgrowth of the existing, by its definition. It is not an outgrowth of the existing R6 development that's there, and the easement that's being discussed is far away from the existing R6. So, it's not, to your words, it's not, to me, it's not a natural extension to what's already there. I guess that's where I'm having some difficulty.
Any more discussion on the motion at hand? All right, and on these circumstances, I like to call for a roll call vote. So, Kendrick, can you do that for us, please?
Yes, sir. So we're going to start off with Board Member Kyle Deering.
Yes.
Board Member Danielle Peoples.
Yes.
Board Member Kip Paraguay.
No.
And then Chairman Brad Jefferson.
Yes.
Board Member Rusty Ingram.
No.
Board Member Kelly Kaiser.
Yes.
Board Member Thomas Brownell.
Yes.
And Board Member Marshall Ballard.
Yes.
What's my count there, Kendrick?
You've got a 6-2.
Okay, motion passes. All right, we're going to go to public comment, and then we'll do rules and procedures. Does anyone here want to make a public comment for 3 minutes? Wendy, have at it.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get a better understanding, so I appreciate your patience. I'm looking at the land use plan, the update, and the actual undeveloped and unrestricted land. It's shaded in the different areas, and Planter's Ridge, that whole line of residents, I'm not one of them, okay? They're all houses. On the other side, it's not, well, it is zoned agricultural, but as far as my understanding is, it's a power line, a Duke Energy power line. So how is that it's zoned agriculture. So when I hear, part is R6 or residential, and the other is agriculture, I think farms or something, you know. It's actual power line that is on the other side of this. So I don't know if the board is aware, I'm just letting you know as looking at the land use plan. Just wanted to let you know about that.
All right. Thank you. All right. Anybody else have any public comment? All right. Hearing none, I'm going to reopen my chairman's remarks, and we're going to talk about rules and procedures, and I will try to be brief for everyone's time. Quickly, the history for the new board members. When I took over as chair about a year ago, it came to my attention that there wasn't any rules and procedures on how to conduct a meeting. I thought that was interesting. And then a few months later, we had a change in staff, and we seemed like every meeting we were changing how we were running the meeting. And I didn't think that was the right way of doing it. So I asked, can we do rules and procedures? City staff said, sure, we just don't have them, and we can do them. So we started down this road in February, March timeframe, something like that. We've had several. We would get them here, and then we'd want to make a change, or I forgot something, or whatever. And so what you have in front of you, before I do that, I want to apologize for the mix-up on the packet. That's my fault. We were having a discussion about these rules, and somehow or another, the version history somebody got the wrong version, and I didn't see it until Wednesday. And that's on me. I need to do a better job of looking at that. So quickly, after reading your email the other night, I got thinking on it and went, I thought I made those changes already. So I got thinking on it and went back and looked, and it was the wrong one. So quickly, I sprung out of bed and redid, kind of put everything back together. And so a lot of what you're seeing, the main changes are to the conflict of interest statements. Those are much more robust than the version you had. And then at the end is the spot that I wanted to bring up, which was the board action. The other thing that I struggle with as chair, since we only do this once a month, is keeping track of what different motions and what are required for each one. And I think future chairs, it would be nice to have that laid out, that when we do a rezoning, that's going to the Board of Aldermen. So it needs to be, where is it? Official zoning. We're making a consistency statement and the recommendation. So I wanted something like that in there. I talked to the city attorney, they added that. And so hopefully that helps that process for myself and future chairs. Earlier today, Busty Ingram made a few comments, found some happies to glads, as my old boss used to say, and then some other more substantive changes. City attorney made those, and so what you have in front of you is those changes. And so it would be my hope that we can have a discussion about these, we can make any changes we want, and if it's too much, I am more than willing to take those notes and take it back, and we can do it next month. Or if they're very simple changes, we can pen and ink those tonight and get this thing approved if it so is the desire of the board. So I will open it up to the board's discussion on the rules and procedures.
Brad, I would like to have some discussion around the public comment.
Yes.
And then kind of thinking about our order when we have action items. We've got the lineup of the staff report, and then we've got the opportunity to ask questions to staff. We've got the applicant remarks, and then I think we usually take questions to the applicant. And then we've got public comment, and I'm observing that during public comment, that tends to be more of the public asking questions that aren't necessarily ours to answer. So I'm just trying to think how best, is it helpful for staff and the applicant to hear the public comment so that they can respond to those when they've got the mic? And then how to keep things from getting a little out of hand when
Yes.
folks are asking questions, I think trying to direct them back to the applicant if it's not a matter that's actually what we're voting on here.
Yes.
And then I've been in situations in other localities where the applicant may be at the stand and members of the public are asking questions. And so how do we want to control that as a board?
It is an excellent question. It is my position, and until I've told otherwise, this is a public meeting, and it's my opinion that if the public wants to speak on an item, I think they should. It's just a matter of principle for me. Now, to your point, how do we control that? It's something I've thought a lot about because we've had this a lot here during my chairmanship. I could be much more forceful with it and just, nope, sorry, sir, you've had your time, and we could do that. I, as chairman running the meeting, struggle with that. And so it's something that I'm working on. I don't know the best way, and I'm open to the board's discussion on this because I'm not happy with it either.
I would suggest, it's a good question Danielle asks. I think you're right. And a lot of times we get questions that really belong to the applicant.
Yes.
Or even to city staff, because a lot of times it's about things that have already come up in the DRC review that the public doesn't get to see, right? And so maybe what we can do is, as not necessarily as part of the rules and procedures, but in a separate way, to have comments for you to make at the beginning of any public comment period of what's allowed. And if they have particular questions about what's being brought before us, they can, some of those will have to go to the applicant, some of those will have to go to city staff. To the city attorney's point earlier, our comments are really only, what we're voting on is really to the technical nature of it. And so I think we need to let the public know that at these meetings. And I know it would take some time out of the meeting to do that, but I think it would help some of this process.
I've often thought that basically what city attorney said about the technical nature of our vote should be explained, I don't know, at the beginning of the meeting. I don't know. Somewhere the public needs to know that I understand your concerns and I oftentimes empathize with their concerns. But I don't get that option. We don't get that option as a board. We have to look at, does it meet the technical requirements? And if it does, then we got to do it, right? And it looks, it makes this board and, by extension, us, not look great in that regard. But I think you're right. I think if there's, and we could draft that language at some point, that we could be a little more informative to the public that, we're going to have these action items, we're voting on this rezoning, and this is what this board looks at. They look at the technical nature, and that's it. And there's, I'm sure, a much better English form than what I just said to come up with that. But I would welcome that. It's something that I've thought about for a couple of months now because I know members of the public are not happy when they come up and they say they're going to build this thing in my backyard and they're logging all the land and this is horrible and you haven't done all this, and then we turn around and go, yep, approved.
But
It's like, I hear you.
the fact is a part of a plan unit development.
Right.
It's already submitted. It falls within the guidelines.
Correct.
So I can give you some of my experience from the different
I'd love to hear
municipalities and counties I've worked for. I've seen public comment periods run exactly like this in my previous jurisdiction, where they can speak after an item or it's saved until the end. And if there are questions, they can be answered. If they're just comments, they're just listened to. And that was at the planning boards. It's also at the boards of adjustment. But the county commissioners would have that public comment period as just that. Their comments for the board to hear, not necessarily answer to, and if they were choosing to answer it, it would be saved until the end of the meeting. So in the spirit of letting them speak, it could be just that, a comment period. But again, that is completely up to the rules and procedure that you choose.
I understand that. I just feel and the board can feel differently. I feel that if someone's taken the time to come downtown and to get up here and then to stand in front of this board and to be on television and ask their questions about a topic at hand, it should be during that time, during that conversation. It shouldn't be at the end after we've already voted and, you know, it's settled. To me, just as a citizen, that's the way I feel.
The other piece of that is they don't have another opportunity, in my estimation, to actually put any comment to this and to even know who the applicant is, right? And the good thing about these meetings is in most cases, the applicant comes in because they want to make a statement. They want to, you know, I heard one of the applicants out in the hallway while we were going through the rest of the meeting, talking to the people that had come to the meeting and answering questions. I heard him out there answering questions, and I think that's good for the public. I think they need that outlet, and it shows open government. That's what we want.
Yeah,
so I agree with you.
But at the same time, I think what your point is set the expectation.
Yes.
That's the key thing to me is that the public knows that they're going to be allowed to speak, but what we're allowed to deal with.
Right.
I know in the Board of Adjustments, we used to do that all the time, that we can only listen to testimony from experts. But then they're not expert. You listen to emotions. I mean, in all these meetings, what you listen to is emotions.
Right.
But you still listen to them, but they know up front that this board is not allowed to deal with those type of things, that they have to be what we're allowed to deal with and how we have to deliberate on that, but they still get a chance to speak.
Right.
Mr. Chair, if I might also contribute my experiences, I have it in my mind that previous boards have allowed public comment at the beginning of the meeting, which gives people an opportunity to ask their questions. And what I think previous boards have done is not answer the questions right then, but as the action items come up, it gives staff and the applicant, if they're present, an opportunity to address those questions as the action items are being presented and deliberated.
Okay, so let me ask this. Someone comes up, they ask 3 or 4 questions. Let's say there's 20 people and each one of them got 3 or 4 questions. Am I taking notes and then asking city staff their questions? What if I don't ask one of their questions?
That's a good question. I will tell you, in the past with previous boards, applicants generally are very responsive, as Mr. Ingram suggested, to concerns made by the public, because ultimately they want to have a good product, they want people to have a good experience, they have a vested interest in this process going smoothly. It has been my experience that the applicants do a very good job of taking copious notes if necessary to be able to address the concerns by the public, because those concerns may be echoed by members of this board.
So, go ahead, Tom.
No.
Oh, okay. Could I don't want to add item D, applicants' responses, but something to that effect, right? I don't know.
Notwithstanding
Well, and
the
I think we need to decide too, so we have public comment, it's not public Q&A.
That is true.
So the public can pose questions in their comments, and if it's done before staff and before the applicant present, to Jamie's point, they could be incorporated into what they're sharing. But I think we need to be careful that we're not hosting a Q&A open house in this forum, that this is a comment period. And even if I don't know that we want to say that it's appropriate for us to ask questions of the public when they're making comments. If this is a public comment period, to me means oral testimony.
Okay.
And if we don't have agreement on that, I think that's where it gets kind of slippery during
Right.
meetings.
What about?
And to add to that point, when we're talking about subdivision review, if we're taking Jamie's example of hearing public comment up front, on an agenda with just subdivisions, or even with a rezoning such as this, you would have to sift through those questions as a board to determine whether or not those are applicable. Has the public brought up a standard in the ordinance that isn't being met? Because that is something that has to be questioned. And the same thing goes with the rezoning. if a citizen has concerns of consistencies with plans or a logical outgrowth that is or isn't, that would be something that has to be, noted and potentially investigated by the board. But when we're talking about things such as traffic, that isn't necessarily considered in a rezoning because, we're not talking about that,
Right.
or a traffic impact analysis, that isn't a requirement of the city of New Bern per se. Those questions can be answered by staff after the meeting or by
Right.
the applicant after the meeting. That type of question isn't necessarily the purview of the board.
Right. What if we did something like this? What if we had, back to what I was talking about before, we had some type of language that I would say before the action items about, this is a public comment period, not a Q&A session between the applicant and staff. If you have those questions, direct those to the applicant and staff after the meeting. Would that suffice?
I think having some sort of script would definitely help, because they're coming up here with emotional-based questions or comments
I haven't
that
heard.
we may care about, but we can't move on.
Right. To your point, I haven't heard this property's being rezoned and I found an issue that the entire staff and everybody missed. I haven't heard that yet. I mean, it could happen, but I haven't heard that. And so you scare me a little bit when you say that would have to be investigated before we, it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
maybe-
then what do I do, right? So then it starts getting weird, but,
Yeah, Brad, maybe it's when you introduce an action item, maybe it's saying this is the type of decision this board will be making, a little short blurb, like a little education synopsis of what we're doing, what we're ruling on. And then I agree with Jamie's recommendation, and I've seen it done this way too, where let the public comments happen first. And before you even go to action items, I think you've got chairman's remarks, then open it up to public comment on any topics. And so we ask them to state their name, their address, what item they're speaking on.
okay.
And then staff, the applicant, all of us can hear the comments.
Yep.
And incorporate it into our discussions, incorporate it into remarks.
I respectfully disagree with that, only from the perspective of now it's incumbent upon us to keep all this stuff straight that people bring up. And I personally like what we have today, which is when an action item is brought up and we hear from Kendrick on what this item actually is, I do agree that you should probably make a statement when an item comes up. This is the type of item it is, here's what we're ruling on, those kinds of things. But to me, it's easier just to hear from people. And I think we may have to be a little bit more forceful about if people make a comment that is for the applicant, right? You need to direct that to the applicant. It's not something that this board considers in our decision-making process.
So I just don't answer it.
Something
The other thing is if you have all the comments up front, then, when the applicant makes his presentation, you're going to hear more questions come up, I can promise you, out of the pig, and that's when it becomes your job. You're going to either have to let them speak out of turn, or you're going to have to quell the comments. That's a tough one. So
It's not fun.
And it could certainly be a blend of both positions. Instead of having all of the comments just listened to by the board at the beginning of the meeting, you could have all of the comments from the public listened to at the end of an item. And again, it's public comment. You can listen to those public comments. It then becomes the job of the applicant to address anything that may be applicable.
So we change the order. We do the staff report, the public comment, and then the applicant's remarks.
You could. It would be a blend, per se. You hear it all up front after the item is presented, and then the applicant can address it if they choose.
What are we trying to solve here? I mean, is what we're doing currently not okay? Or is it more that people are bringing comments and questions up that really aren't for this board?
I agree with Danielle that it is kind of a circus in a sense. I mean, you saw tonight. You got one gentleman off to the side. He's asking this guy questions. He's not addressing us. They're having their own conversation down there, and I don't like that look. I don't think that's the space for it. I think it naturally happens, especially here in the courtroom. When we were over at the other place, that didn't happen as much because there was separation. But here, they're right there, and the applicant's right there. And I think it brings in some disorder that I don't like. And so I like the idea of some type of expectations that it's not going to quell people's questions, and it's not going to quell what they're going to say. They've already come down here. And they're probably still going to be mad if it doesn't go their way. And so I think I'm addressing the nature of your concern, which it is kind of this, for lack of a better word, circus down here. And I agree. I'm not a fan. I don't have a solution right at hand. It's something that I've thought a lot about, and I don't have one.
Well, on Trustee's point, what are we trying to solve for? Which is a good question to go back to. If we want the public to feel like they're able to get their questions answered and their perspectives heard, if we allow them to make comments at the top of the meeting or at the top of each action item, that gives staff and the applicant the chance to address that. Or to say, I heard you gentlemen in the third row, let's talk after the meeting, or let me give you my phone number. And if I were the applicant, I would want that opportunity to know if there's a question or a concern and to be given the chance to address it in this forum instead of it being something at the end.
The only counter to that would be I have had people that listen to the staff report, and I then call on them, and they're, no, I'm good. I got my question answered, right? And so then they don't have to come up. They don't have to speak. It doesn't draw on the meeting, right? So
is it that the public doesn't know who to contact? And when I look at, when we send a notification out about the planning board meeting,
well, that's a whole other
we
conversation.
had everything going to Kendrick, and I'm just curious if it was, let's just say it was I'm just going to pick on Carolina Colors, if they knew that the contact person to answer any questions, if they had any concerns about it, they knew who to call. Prior to this meeting, would that stop some of the additional questions?
I'll try to chime in, at least on that point of it. What my, at least processing, or as I'm processing through notification and things like that, I try to be as transparent and as open. We've got sign notification, which is a physical sign placed within the vicinity of that property or on the property.
Sure.
And secondary to that, we do the mailed notice. Of course, the phones are open, things to that effect. As a last-ditch effort, I always check any voicemails that I have prior to a meeting. I'm following up on most emails. Those emails take priority if I have a citizen that's asking questions about an upcoming meeting. What I would say, and it's different from where I used to, or what municipality that I used to work at, those questions and those phone calls came early. As soon as the signs, as soon as the notifications were out, they were extremely early. Here, it's pretty much the opposite. I either don't get it, or it's pretty much after the fact. Or they show up here, and they decide to go ahead and ask those questions. My contact information is all over everything. But unfortunately, I just do not get the response or the questions from the citizens in most cases.
Correct. To expand upon this, this is a very big rabbit hole, as well as the entire rules of procedure that we're getting into. The gentleman who lives down the street, who saw the clearing, also got a letter, I would assume, because he's, right across the street. They could have contacted staff to find out this information. Additionally, to answer the question of what is the question that we're trying to answer for this, it's setting rules of procedure so that we avoid a legally precarious situation in the future by not instilling consistency in the board's procedures. Because
sitting out there, excuse me. Go ahead.
Not a problem, because when you consistently change the process, you're also consistently treating people differently.
Correct. Yeah.
Which opens yourself up to appeals, which goes to the Board of Adjustment. And if that is or isn't overturned, could also be appealed to Superior Court. So we are trying to instill some consistency, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah, my question was not about why are we doing rules and procedures. I know, I have a very good handle on why we're doing that. My comment was more about, I feel that the way we currently handle things is a pretty good method, getting to an action item, allowing public comment at the right time so that they feel like they're addressing that particular item. I agree that the questions that we get and the comments that we get are not necessarily appropriate for this board, so we need some sort of statement as to what we're considering, what we can consider, and what their comments mean, and that the applicants hear. If you have particular questions about, what houses are going in or what street is going where, you need to ask the applicant. That's not something we answer. And I think, in my estimation, after now having served on this board for a year or so, that's what I think we're trying to solve, is that particular issue. If we wanted to do the public comment in the beginning, I'm not necessarily a fan of that, but we could do that. I'll say it again, I said it before, I currently like the way we're doing it, but I think we need some sort of statement so people understand what it is we can, what kinds of comments we can actually consider, and what kinds of comments should go to the applicant, and what kinds of comments should go to city staff.
I was just going to say, having been on that side of the aisle many times, I would prefer, as the applicant, to hear the comments, so that as I made my presentation, I was able to deal with a lot of those issues that might come up, because or have a chance at the end of the comments, if you did it in reverse, if you had the applicant's comments, then the public comments, that the applicant have the opportunity to
Come back and
deal with it. The applicant, because most of them are questions that are irrelevant to this board. And the only way you're going to get some of those answers out there for the public is to have that interaction between the applicant having an opportunity to comment, and then the public also comment, and then there, create some bit of dialogue that can be continued afterwards. But you can eliminate a lot of stuff, a lot of questions and feelings and hard feelings if the applicant has the opportunity to address the comments that are made by the public.
Okay. To that end, if we flip it, because staff report, public comment, applicant's remarks, highlighted at the beginning with some type of statement about what the expectations of this board are, would that work for everyone on the board?
I think it's something we can try to float it out there and let's see how it works.
Yes.
I agree with Kip. I think we can try it. If it doesn't work, maybe the right thing to do if it's not working is we do the comments in the beginning. I think it's always something open. And, in the rules and procedures I read, I think the city attorney's inserted a statement that says we can amend these whenever we want. So if we find something's not working and we want to change it, we can. So that's an important point.
Danielle, what do you think of that?
Just to clarify, we're saying for each action item, we would introduce it with a quick educational description of what we're doing on this item as a board. And then we would have staff comments, our questions, we'd have public comment, and then we'd have the applicant comment, and we could ask the applicant questions.
Yes.
I like the way you phrase that it's staff report, and then we get to ask questions about the staff report before we hear the public comment. I actually think that's important.
And then is it appropriate, we did it tonight, is it appropriate if we have additional questions for staff at the end of all that to say, Kendrick, we've got some additional questions?
Yeah, I think so. I think after the public comment, that's when it goes to the board. And at that point, it's a free-for-all for the board to ask whatever questions they want at that point.
That's not inappropriate at all. You're more than welcome if you have to circle back to something that maybe I presented on or touched on, and you have additional questions after the applicant, along with the actual citizen that spoke and had some type of back and forth. Yeah.
Okay.
Come back
I mean, even all the way up to somebody proposing a motion to recommend approval or denial. When it goes to the deliberation or discussion amongst the board, that is still an appropriate time for any board member to bring their concern, and whether that's going to be answered by staff or by each other, there is still plenty of time to ask those questions as the board to staff the applicant.
So basically up until the point that we approve or disapprove.
Yeah, I mean, a good way to look at it is that this set of procedures that we've just discussed that we might be agreeable to, that's the bare minimum, right? So when the applicant is done responding to those remarks and the board is done with their questions and you guys go, the floor goes back to you guys as the board, you can then at that point exceed what the minimums are. If you still have questions, those can be asked.
That's a good point.
One last clarification.
Yes.
If we, the board, have questions for the public on their public comment, do we want to allow ourselves to ask the public questions, or do we want to leave that as a comment period only?
That brings in the question of standing.
Yeah,
I would strongly recommend that if you are going to entertain public comment, it is comment only.
And I just think we need to decide.
Okay.
So that we have it documented.
So-
I'm not suggesting one way or the other.
Okay.
I just think we need to have a decision point on it.
So to that point,
And there is not a limit for the applicant to answer the public's comments.
right,
So there's that.
that's right. I don't time the applicant.
No.
Right? Okay. No. So to that point, do we entertain questions from the public? Is it, you can come up and you can say the traffic pattern sucks and all this, that, and the other, and is there a fire department or whatever question you want to ask, but this is a comment period. We're not going to sit up here and get back and forth with you. Is that?
You can set the standard that the board is going to listen to your comment and may or may not answer questions.
The Board of Aldermen
Because
do
this
that.
is a
Right,
public comment section, not a question and answer
Right.
section.
That's the, they just did it this week. The Board of Aldermen, they do that every other meeting.
Petition to citizens.
They do that, and that, they don't comment back. The citizens say whatever they're going to say, and then generally they don't. Sometimes they do.
And
So-
again, I think it's worth reiterating that half of what you all do, which is the subdivision process, is a technical review process.
Correct.
So the need to have this robust public engagement discourse may not be relevant to the standards that you all are constrained by.
Which comes about in the comments that we're proposing that you make to the public as each item comes up. That this is what we're considering. And
Here's my other problem, and I asked Robert this last night at the meeting at Development Services. On the sign that we put out, it says, I got a picture of it, let me read it. Notice of public hearing. Now, it doesn't say public comment, but as a layperson, it's a hearing, public hearing. I read that as I'm going to be able to go down there and talk to these people. That's what it said.
And that's true. In eliciting public comment, you give people a forum to express their thoughts and ideas to the extent that they're germane to what you're talking about. I think now your question, the inquiry that the board is struggling with is, to what extent do we ask questions of citizens, and to what extent do we respond as a board to questions from citizens? I think that's when it goes from a public comment period to something else that is more amorphous.
Okay.
And I think what you all have been debating is more aligned with a public comment period than this other thing.
I'm good with comment, no questions. I think.
If a person has a question, what is what I'm
They-
hearing? then-
because they will bring up a question.
Yes, they will.
If people have questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Then I think that what you're contemplating in restructuring paragraph H7 is to give staff and or the applicant an opportunity to respond to any questions to the extent that a response is necessary for you all to make a determination.
Excellent language.
And for us making a comment to the member of the public to say that would be a question best for the applicant who's here in the audience, and just making that simple statement.
I would make that statement at the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
I think I would go with, we're back to that education piece.
Yeah.
You're here, we're here to listen to your comments. This isn't a Q&A session. I wouldn't say it quite like that. I'd come up with some kind of flowery language. And then that way,
They can meet with that.
they can make their, they can make their contribution, which I feel is very important. And then, whether it's germane to the conversation or not, really isn't up to them. That's up to us.